A millionaire paid $500,000 for one night with a virgin, and that night changed everything. Winter in New York has its own way of slowing people down. Sharp, knife-like winds slicing through crowded streets, forcing hurried steps, while the golden lights along Fifth Avenue glow as if trying to keep the whole city warm. Tonight, in the middle of that cold, the Met Museum shone like a giant gem, hosting the annual Met Museum Charity Gala, where finance, art, and the city's most powerful names converged. Inside the Grand Hall, evening gowns swept by like waves of color, glasses of red wine shimmered under crystal chandeliers. Every handshake, every smile was calculated, part of a silent chess game for influence. But Lena Carter was the one exception of the night. Lena, communications manager at a green tech startup, didn't belong to this world. She was here only because of the persistent pleas of her best friend, Emily Parker, PR director for an arts foundation. Emily wanted Lena to bring some truth to a man she described as someone constantly surrounded by pretenses. Lena, just come with me tonight. He needs to meet someone who isn't here for money or status. And I know only you can pull that off, Emily had said 3 days ago, her tone somewhere between persuasion and command. Lena, though skeptical of the entire plan, agreed, partly out of curiosity, partly because her friend had nearly begged on her knees. Tonight, Lena wore a simple deep blue gown that fit her form perfectly, baring her slender shoulders. Her brown hair was pinned in a low chignon, with a few loose strands framing her face, an artful mix of elegance and defiance. She didn't know that this very contrast would draw the entire room's attention. Across the hall, Ethan Ross, CEO of Ross Renewables, known as the power master of the renewable energy world, stood quietly with a glass of champagne. At 39, he had transformed a family business into a global empire. Tall, broad-shouldered, in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, his gaze was sharp enough to make anyone falter. But tonight, that gaze landed somewhere unexpected, on Lena Carter. The host took the stage, announcing a special auction. Gentlemen may bid for an evening of dinner with one of tonight's single ladies. All proceeds will go to community art projects. Murmurs swept through the hall. Lena chuckled softly, about to whisper something to Emily when she felt herself being gently nudged toward the stage. No, Emily, don't! Before she could protest, she was standing under the spotlight before hundreds of curious eyes. Her heart raced, but her steel blue eyes kept their composure. The bidding started at $10,000, then $20,000, $50,000. Lena maintained a polite smile, silently wishing someone would close it quickly so she could return to her table. But the numbers kept climbing. $100,000, $200,000. The crowd hummed with excitement. Then a deep male voice rang out from the back rows. $500,000. The entire room went silent. Lena turned instinctively and met that gaze. Deep, dark, as if it could see straight into her mind. Ethan Ross didn't blink. In that moment, everything else fell away. Only the pounding of her heart and a silence so taut it felt ready to snap remained. The host, slightly stunned, tapped the gavel. Sold to Mr. Ethan Ross. Applause broke out, but Lena didn't hear it. She only knew one thing. Tonight, her life had just veered into an entirely different direction. The Celeste restaurant sat at the top of a towering skyscraper, its floor-to-ceiling windows revealing New York at night. A sea of lights like millions of fallen stars. Lena had never been here before. This was the kind of place that appeared only in glossy magazines for the ultra-wealthy, where menus never listed prices. Ethan had reserved the table in advance, right by the window, private enough to be away from the city's noise, yet close enough to watch the glittering traffic below. He rose as Lena entered, his eyes carrying a faint smile. Not the polite kind, but the kind that said he was genuinely pleased she had come. I hope I didn't make things awkward with the way we met, Ethan began, his voice deep and steady, as if breaking the ice right away. Lena sat down, one eyebrow slightly raised. You paid $500,000 just to have dinner with me. I think our definitions of awkward might be a little different. Ethan chuckled softly. Maybe, but if I told you that money was a donation to community art and I just happened to pick you, would you believe me? No, Lena replied instantly without hesitation. You looked at me before the auction. I saw that look. Ethan leaned back, his lips curving slightly as if caught in the act. Sharp, I like that. The waiter arrived, placing a vintage bottle of red wine before them. The conversation shifted to lighter topics: art, music, small coffee shops in Brooklyn. Lena realized Ethan knew more than she expected, but also noticed his habit of steering the discussion wherever he wanted. You're used to being in control, aren't you? Lena asked, not as a criticism, but as a challenge. Ethan tilted his head slightly. In business, it's kept me alive, but tonight, maybe I can let you take the lead. The remark caught Lena off guard, but she masked it by swirling her wine glass. Then let me ask you this. Why renewable energy? You could have made money anywhere else. His eyes darkened, not in irritation, but in memory. My father died in an explosion at a coal plant. I was 19. I swore I'd never let that happen to anyone else. Clean energy is the only path I see worth taking. In that moment, beneath all the luxury, Lena sensed something real, fragile even beneath his cold exterior. She said nothing, only nodded, an unspoken acknowledgement. When dinner ended, Ethan escorted Lena to the ground floor. The glass doors slid open, and cold wind swept in. But it wasn't as sharp as the flash of cameras waiting outside. Paparazzi snapped relentlessly, their lights bursting. Sorry, I didn't think they would, Ethan began. It's fine, Lena cut in, her voice calm but her eyes sharp. But you should know, I'm not good at living in this world. Ethan held her gaze for a long moment, as if imprinting her words in his mind. Maybe, but I want to try changing that. And so, under the New York night, their story truly began. 3 days after their dinner at Celeste, Lena was back in the familiar rhythm of work at Green Pulse, a small yet ambitious green tech startup. The office sat on the 8th floor of an old Soho building, with red brick walls and large windows overlooking the street, where the sound of car horns and the smell of fresh coffee always drifted in. That morning, Lena was reviewing the details of a new communications campaign when Emily texted, "Brace yourself, VIP incoming." Lena frowned slightly. At Green Pulse, VIP usually meant a journalist or a minor investor. 5 minutes later, everything changed. The glass door swung open, and Ethan Ross walked in. A charcoal gray suit tailored to perfection, light glinting off polished leather shoes. Behind him, his assistant carried a laptop and a folder of documents. The entire office seemed to hold its breath. Sorry for not giving notice, Ethan said, his deep voice filling the space. I wanted to check the progress of the project Ross Renewables invested in. Lena set her pen down, feeling equal parts surprised and cautious. You're here for work? In part, Ethan replied, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly, his gaze lingering on her longer than necessary. The meeting began almost immediately. Ethan asked sharp questions, prompting fresh ideas for the campaign. Lena realized he wasn't just making conversation. He knew the details, even recalling figures from last month's report. When the meeting wrapped up, people gradually dispersed. Ethan remained, waiting as Lena gathered her papers. Coffee after work? He asked, his voice lowered in a subtle invitation. Lena crossed her arms, studying him. Do you always check on projects like this? Only when the project is special, Ethan said, unblinking. The answer made Lena want to laugh and argue at the same time, but she simply shook her head and headed for the door. Ethan followed close behind, and for a brief moment, Lena noticed the curious glances from her co-workers. She knew rumors would spread fast, but a small part of her didn't really mind. Their after-work meetups became a quiet routine, though neither of them ever called it dating. Sometimes it was a small Brooklyn cafe where Lena liked her latte with cinnamon. Sometimes it was an independent art exhibit, where Ethan seemed genuinely surprised she could stand for 20 minutes staring at a single abstract painting. Ethan often talked about his business trips, tense negotiations with traditional energy giants. But the more he spoke, the more pieces of his personal life slipped through. How he liked to cook when stressed, or that he had once learned piano as a child but gave it up. One Friday evening, they walked through Central Park. Snow began to fall, light and steady, dusting their shoulders in white. Ethan suddenly fell silent, slowing his pace. "My father died in an explosion at a coal plant," he said, his voice roughened. "I was 19. My mother almost collapsed under it. I swore I wouldn't let that happen to another family." Lena stopped, looking at him under the warm glow of a street lamp. There was an emptiness behind his eyes, something that success and power couldn't fill. "That's why you chose renewables," she said softly. Ethan only nodded, no further explanation needed. As they walked on, the space between them seemed to shrink. Ethan reached out, and Lena let her hand rest in his. No more words, just the sound of falling snow and the beat of two hearts in a moment that felt fragile. That afternoon, while she was sorting through files, the office phone rang. "Ms. Carter, there's a call on line 2, the receptionist said. "A gentleman says it's about reviewing procedures this evening." Lena frowned. She had no such appointment. "Hello? Are you free to review procedures tonight?" Ethan's voice came through, smooth but with a hint of mischief. "I have a few protocols that require your expertise." Lena glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "What kind of protocol?" she asked, playing along. "Very special ones, requiring personal focus and a controlled environment." "And where will this take place?" "I know the perfect spot. Quiet, private, well-ventilated." She bit her lip to keep from laughing. "Sounds very professional, Mr. Ross. What time would be convenient?" 8 o'clock. I'll text you the address." That evening, the address led her to an upscale neighborhood in New York. The house was modern yet cozy, with large glass windows overlooking the city's glittering skyline. Ethan opened the door in dark jeans and a rolled-sleeve white shirt, a casual version of himself that caught her off guard. "Right on time, as always," he said, stepping aside. "Care for a little wine before we begin the review?" "Depends. Exactly what are we reviewing?" He stepped closer, narrowing the space until his warmth brushed against her. "I think we could start with interpersonal communication." "Sounds technical," Lena murmured, her heart beating faster. "Then, assessing operational compatibility." They were so close now that Lena had to tilt her head up to meet his eyes. She saw the golden flecks in them, felt the slight hitch in his breath. "If we find any compatibility issues, we'll have to work very closely to resolve them," he whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch sent a jolt through her. She felt her breath catch, and for a dizzy, dangerous second, she thought he might kiss her. But then he stepped back. "But first, dinner. I can't let you work on an empty stomach." He led her to the balcony, where a small table was set with candles and a panoramic view of the city. Romantic enough. Elegant without being ostentatious. "You cooked?" she asked, genuinely surprised. "Not exactly," he admitted with a sheepish smile. "But I did choose every dish on the menu and reheat them myself." Lena's laughter rang into the night, and Ethan realized the sound was quickly becoming his newest addiction. Under the star-scattered New York sky, with the city spread out like a carpet of light beneath them, they both knew they were playing with fire. The following week passed in a haze of stolen glances and accidental encounters in the hallway. Ethan always seemed to appear just as Lena was heading out for lunch, somehow, coincidentally, walking in the same direction. Colleagues started joking about her lucky streak with the CEO, but Lena only gave a strained smile and skillfully steered the conversation elsewhere. On Friday afternoon, as Lena was reviewing the financial report, Maria walked over to her desk with a puzzled expression. "Lena, do you know the blonde woman in the red dress who's at reception asking for Mr. Ross?" Lena's heart skipped a beat, but her voice remained calm. "No, why?" "Because she just said she's his regular companion and that they have a lunch date today." Maria stared at her, as if trying to read her reaction. "I thought you'd want to know, given all those coincidences lately." Lena felt as if someone had punched her hard in the stomach. She forced a smile, muttering something about not seeing why that had anything to do with her. But when Maria walked away, she just sat there, staring blankly at her computer screen without seeing a thing. Logic told her she had no right to feel betrayed. Ethan had never promised exclusivity, and they weren't officially together. But after everything he had said about ending other relationships, after the intensity of their recent encounters, 15 minutes later, Lena saw Ethan walk through the main hallway beside an extraordinarily beautiful woman, tall, elegant, with the kind of high-end beauty seen in fashion magazines. wearing a red dress that was probably worth more than Lena's monthly salary. The blonde woman in the red dress walked beside Ethan with the ease of someone who had been in his world for a long time. When Ethan passed by Lena's desk, their eyes met for only a fraction of a second. She saw surprise, then a flicker of alarm in his gaze, but he quickly looked away, pretending to focus on his surroundings. The rest of the afternoon was pure torture. Every minute Lena imagined Ethan having lunch with that flawless woman, laughing at her stories, perhaps even making plans for the evening. At exactly 5 o'clock, she packed her things and hurried toward the elevator, hoping to leave before anyone noticed. But when the doors opened on the ground floor, Ethan was standing there waiting. "Lena, we need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," she replied, trying to walk past him. "Enjoy your lunch." He gently took her hand. "It's not what you think." "I'm not thinking anything. You're free to have lunch with whoever you want, Mr. Ross." Her return to a formal address hit Ethan square in the chest like a slap. "That was a business meeting. Elena is the representative of one of our biggest investors. The lunch was scheduled weeks ago." "You don't need to explain." "Yes, I do." His voice sharpened with intensity. "After everything we've shared, after what I told you last night, of course I need to explain." Lena finally looked at him, and he could clearly see the pain in her green eyes, even though she tried to mask it with professional composure. "You see, this is exactly what I was afraid would happen. Complications, misunderstandings, irrational jealousy." "It's not irrational if it's real," he cut in, "and it's not a complication. It's part of this. It's part of caring about someone so much that just thinking about losing them scares you." His blunt honesty softened her a little, but Lena kept her guard up. "Ethan, maybe we should—" "Lena!" A man's voice rang out, interrupting her. They both turned to see a tall, handsome man approaching with a radiant smile. Lena instantly went pale. "David, what are you doing here?" "I came to New York for business and wanted to surprise you." David hugged her warmly, making Ethan's eyes darken dangerously. "I was hoping I could take you to dinner, like old times." "David, this is my boss, Ethan Ross. Ethan, this is David Morales, an old friend." Ethan didn't miss the hesitation before old friend, nor the way David held her, the familiar smile, and the knowing look in his eyes. "Pleasure," Ethan said, his smile not reaching his eyes as he extended his hand. David shook it with the confidence of a man used to being liked. "Likewise, Lena always speaks highly of her job." "Oh, does she?" Ethan's voice turned dangerously smooth. "How long have you two known each other?" "Since college. We dated for—" "How long was it, Lena?" 2 years, she replied, wishing she could disappear that very second. "That was a long time ago," she said softly. "Not that long," David smiled. "And some feelings never go away, right?" That was the last straw. Ethan took a step forward, his presence immediately dominating. "I'm afraid there's an urgent meeting with Ms. Carter," he said in a tone that brooked no argument. "Work matter that needs to be addressed immediately." David seemed slightly thrown off by the sudden tension. "Lena, I'll call you later to set up dinner." When David walked away, the air between them was thick enough to cut. "An ex-boyfriend?" Ethan asked, voice tight. "Yes. And were you planning to have dinner with him?" "I don't know, maybe. It's complicated." "Complicated? Complicated like my business lunch or in another way?" For the first time, Lena saw Ethan completely lose control. His eyes burned with a primal possessiveness that sent a shiver down her spine. "You're jealous," she said, surprised at her own realization. "Jealous out of my mind," he admitted bluntly. "Just the thought of him touching you, making you laugh, sharing memories with you that I don't have, it drives me insane." That raw confession erased every trace of her anger about the lunch with Elena. Now she understood he had felt exactly as she did when she saw that scene. "I'm not having dinner with him," she said quietly. "Why not?" She stepped closer, leaving only a few centimeters between them, enough for her to see the golden flecks in his eyes. "Because I already have plans with someone who drives me crazy in a way I never thought possible." The smile that curved Ethan's lips in that moment shattered every wall she had left. Not caring that they were in the company lobby, he pulled her into his arms and kissed her with a fierce intensity that wiped every other thought from her mind. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathless. "Let's go," he whispered against her lips. Ethan's apartment in the upscale neighborhood was exactly as she had imagined. Minimalist, elegant, with a breathtaking panoramic view of New York. The months of tension, the stolen encounters, the restless nights filled with longing, all of it poured into the moment they kissed with abandon. When they finally pulled away, both were breathless. "Lena," he murmured against her mouth, "I want you to know this isn't just physical attraction for me." "Then what is it?" "It's everything. You're intelligent, funny, and genuine in a way I didn't think existed. You challenge me, make me want to be better, make me want to be worthy of you." Lena felt her eyes sting. "Don't say those things unless you truly mean them." "I mean them. More than anything I've ever felt in my life," he said, his voice so intense it made her shiver. "And that scares me, because I've never had so much to lose." They stood on the balcony, holding each other, with all of New York spread out below, like a carpet of lights. It was a perfect moment, pure in its beauty and intimacy. "Do you know what the strangest thing about all of this is?" Lena whispered against his chest. "What?" "I always thought that when you found something real, it would feel calm, safe. But with you, it's like standing in the middle of an electrical storm." Ethan chuckled softly. "I always thought love was a rational choice, something I could plan and control. But this is completely irrational, and I don't care." "Maui, you just said the word love?" Ethan froze, as if realizing what he had just confessed. "Yeah, I guess I did." "Good," she whispered, rising on her toes to kiss him, "because I'm falling in love with you too." This kiss was different from any they had shared before. It wasn't just passion or desire. It was a promise, a declaration, a commitment to everything that lay ahead. When they parted, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "You know what this means, don't you?" "What?" "That I'll have to find a way to stop myself from touching you at work. It's going to be the sweetest kind of torture." Lena laughed, her voice mingling with the night breeze over New York. "I think we could get creative with our lunch breaks." "Absolutely. And maybe I'll need to make more unannounced inspections at your apartment." "Of course, someone has to make sure I'm maintaining my work performance." They kissed again, laughing into each other's mouths, feeling as if the world had shifted forever in just one night. Far below, the lights of New York sparkled like stars scattered across the ground, silently witnessing a love story that was only just beginning. The next 3 weeks felt like living in a dream. Ethan skillfully found reasons to show up at Lena's office with increasingly elaborate excuses, making Maria grow more and more suspicious. That day, Lena got an unexpected call while at work. The woman's voice on the other end was polite yet firm. "Ms. Carter, this is Margaret Ross, Ethan's mother. I'd like to meet you, alone." Lena hesitated for a moment. The tone wasn't an invitation. It was a velvet-covered command. She agreed, and that afternoon, they met at an upscale tea room on the Upper East Side. Margaret Ross entered with the poise of someone used to having the world bend to her will. A simple yet expensive black dress, silver hair perfectly swept back, and cold gray eyes that scanned Lena as if evaluating every detail. "I've heard about you," Margaret began, her tone devoid of any small talk. "Ethan is quite taken with you." Lena kept her posture straight, offering a faint smile. "Thank you." "But," Margaret continued, "you don't belong in our world. Ethan needs someone who can stand beside him in every situation, from international boardrooms to high-level events. You cannot." The words dropped like ice. Lena stayed silent, letting her speak. "I'll be direct. I can help you. Enough money to walk away from my son's life and start anew anywhere you want. Not everyone gets such an offer." She opened her purse and took out an envelope. $1 million US, more than you'd make in 10 years. In exchange, disappear from his life. "Are you trying to bribe me?" "I'm giving you an honorable way out before things get more complicated." Lena shot to her feet, trembling with fury. "Keep your money. Your son is worth more to me than all the gold in the world." "How romantic. But romance dies when society's pressure comes crashing down. When you see the way people look at you at high society parties, when you realize you will never be accepted. That world doesn't matter to me, only Ethan does. He needs a wife of equal social standing, raised in the proper environment. Someone who understands the responsibilities of that role, like Elena. Like Elena? That's right. The daughter of a major investor, well-educated, someone who won't make him choose between love and duty. Lena felt something shatter inside her chest. Ethan has already made his choice. Or is he just having fun before getting serious with the right person? The words were poison, planting seeds of doubt in Lena's mind. And they were working. Please, just go. Think carefully before it's too late for both of you. When she left, Lena collapsed into her chair, the woman's venomous words echoing in her head. What if she's right? What if I'm just a passing distraction? What if eventually Ethan gets tired of the trouble this relationship brings? For the first time since it began, Lena wondered if she was living in a fairy tale already destined for a heartbreaking ending. 2 days after meeting Margaret Ross, Lena still hadn't told Ethan. She didn't want it to turn into a pointless argument, but the weight of it lingered. When Ethan called and invited her to the investors' winter gala the following week, Lena looked into his eyes over the coffee table and spoke plainly. If we're serious, I want people to know. Not as a rumor, not as a stolen photo, but publicly, by your side. Ethan was silent for a few seconds, then set down his cup. Lena, you know the current situation. Ross Renewables is in a sensitive stage of negotiations. Anything could be used against us. So that's a no, Lena cut in, her voice not loud but sharp enough to make him pause. It's not a no, Ethan sighed. It's just not the right time. Lena held his gaze. In that moment, she remembered Margaret's words, her cold, assessing eyes, and she realized that if she stayed, she might always be in this position, the woman standing on the sidelines of his life. She set his house key on the table. I don't want to be your secret, Ethan. His eyes flickered with confusion, then with something that looked like regret. But he didn't stop her. Lena walked out of the cafe, the winter wind cutting against her skin. She knew they had just let a distance grow between them, one that wouldn't be easy to erase. The investors' winter gala was held at the Plaza Hotel, red carpets stretching wide and chandeliers glittering above. Lena wasn't there. She stayed home, trying to focus on a new project draft, but every word blurred on the page. In the grand ballroom, Ethan, dressed in a black tuxedo, stepped onto the stage to the sound of applause. His speech had been prepared for weeks, but as he faced hundreds of investors, the CEO of Ross Renewables paused. Before I talk about numbers, he began, his voice steady, I want to speak about something else. Something more important than any deal. A ripple of murmurs spread through the room. Margaret Ross, seated in the front row, frowned slightly. In recent months, Ethan continued, I've kept an extraordinary woman out of my public life. Not because she wasn't worthy, but because I was afraid. Afraid this world would hurt her. But I've realized the only thing that's hurt her is me. All eyes locked on him. Cameras began sweeping across the audience. Lena Carter, he said her name clearly. If you're listening, know that I don't care about rumors, about judgmental stares. I care about walking beside you openly for as long as I live. Silence hung for a beat before applause erupted like thunder. Some investors laughed, others nodded knowingly. In her small apartment, Lena stood frozen in front of the TV. Her heart raced, and though she tried to resist, the corner of her lips curved upward. She knew the decision to step forward had just become harder to resist than ever. Just a few hours after the gala, when New York had settled into its quiet night, a knock sounded at Lena's apartment door. She opened it to find Ethan standing there, still in his tuxedo, tie loosened, eyes both tired and unwavering. I'm guessing you saw it, he said, his voice rough from an evening of speeches. You're insane, completely insane. I'm insane because I love you, insane with despair at losing you, insane with anger at my own cowardice. Ethan, don't interrupt me. I have to say this. You're right. I wasn't ready to fight for us openly. I was afraid of the trouble, the consequences, afraid of having to choose between you and everything I've built. But tonight I realized something. What? That without you, everything I've built means nothing? That success without love is just a gilded cage? That I'd rather be happy with you in a small apartment than be miserable in a mansion without you? Lena felt tears roll down her cheeks. And your company, your reputation. The company will survive. My reputation will recover. But if I lose you, I'll never recover. He stepped closer, whispering, I love you, Lena Carter. Love you enough to face my mother, the board, the whole of New York if I have to. Love you enough to change my entire world, as long as you're in it. And if things don't go smoothly, if the problems get too big, we'll face them together. Because what we have is stronger than any obstacle. I love you, she whispered. I've never stopped loving you. Then don't go. Stay, fight with me. Let's build something beautiful, no matter what the world says. Lena answered with a kiss full of passion, love, and long-suppressed hope. It was a kiss that tasted of new beginnings and promises meant to be kept. Both of them knew the difficult road was only just starting, but they also knew that together they could overcome anything. After their night of reconciliation, Lena and Ethan no longer had to dodge glances in public. This time, their presence together wasn't just private, it was openly part of each other's lives. One May morning, as Lena prepared to present a new community art project, she walked into the main conference room at Ross Renewables and froze. On the projector screen wasn't her project slide. It was a photo of the two of them at the opening of her very first exhibition. Along both sides of the room, company employees stood in rows, smiling. Ethan emerged from the back, not in his usual suit, but in a crisp white shirt, holding a small velvet box. He stopped in front of Lena, opened it, revealing a ring, simple yet exquisite. Lena Carter, he said, his deep voice thick with emotion. I want you to be not just part of my life, but my whole life. Will you marry me? The room seemed to freeze for a beat, then erupted in applause and cheers from their colleagues. Lena laughed through welling tears and nodded. The wedding took place that summer at a seaside villa in the Hamptons. The sky was blue, the ocean breeze carried the scent of salt, and the sound of a violin played as Lena walked down an aisle of white sand. Surrounded by powerful figures and close friends, they exchanged vows, not just before the law, but before the very moments that had bound them together. After the wedding, Ethan's mother came to apologize to Lena, admitting she had been wrong and giving them her blessing. A year after the wedding, a crisp autumn morning in New York carried the scent of fresh coffee. Lena stood on the penthouse balcony, cradling a cup of hot tea, looking down at the stream of cars like ribbons of light. Ethan stepped out, draping a wool scarf around her neck. News, he murmured. I've closed the deal to build the Community Arts Center in Brooklyn, and we're going to need another room in the house. Lena turned, eyes widening before breaking into a radiant smile. Are you saying? He nodded, his smile fuller than she'd seen in a long time. In the months that followed amid packed schedules, they made time to prepare for their first child. Lena continued running her community projects but learned to slow her pace, to savor small moments, quiet afternoons with books, evenings revisiting their wedding photos, the nights Ethan returned to practicing piano. One winter evening, snow falling thick outside, Ethan played the very first song he had learned as a child. Lena sat listening, her hand resting on her rounded belly, feeling each note as a promise. No matter what the world outside brought, they would remain together. And so, from a moment that once seemed improbable at a gala long ago, they had written a story even time would struggle to fade. A story of a love strong enough to change an entire life.